My name's Lucas. I was 29 when all this went down. It was Thanksgiving, the first one without Grandpa around. He'd passed 3 months earlier, and honestly, everything felt off without him. For as long as I could remember, Grandpa had been the real backbone of our family. Not in any official way or anything, but he was the guy everybody listened to. Every holiday get-together, every heated argument, every ridiculous family meltdown, he was the one who always found a way to calm the waters. Now that he was gone, it felt like we were all just floating around without an anchor, each of us sizing the others up like we were waiting for the first person to crack. Mom was hosting this year like she always did. Same peeling wallpaper on the living room walls, same rickety old dining table Grandpa had knocked together back when Mom was a kid. Same sad, overcooked turkey Mom proudly served every year, and the same snide little Redines bouncing around the table like ping-pong balls. It should have felt weirdly comforting, familiar even, but it didn't. Not this time. The whole house was thick with tension, the kind nobody dared to mention out loud. Everyone sat there acting like nothing was different, but under the surface, you could feel it, we were all waiting for something ugly to happen. I was parked near the end of the table, half-heartedly pushing my food around, pretending not to catch the dirty looks people kept sneaking my way. Lately, those looks had gotten more and more common ever since Grandpa's will had been read. Nobody had said anything straight to my face yet, but I could feel it like a punch to the gut. The bitterness. The envy. The disbelief. They couldn't wrap their heads around why Grandpa had decided to leave just about everything to me. And it wasn't just sentimental junk either, not just his old watch or a few dusty keepsakes. Nope. I got the house. The land. The savings. All of it. And it wasn't like I was the eldest grandkid either, that title belonged to my sister, Sophie. She was 31, louder, prettier, and about 100 times better at charming people than I ever was. Sophie had the kind of dazzling smile that made strangers hand over their wallets without even thinking about it. And she absolutely despised the fact that I'd beaten her at something she couldn't weasel her way into. I knew they'd been whispering about it ever since the funeral. Sophie was leading the charge, no doubt about it. She'd always been a master at rallying people to her side when she needed to. Poor Sophie, who spent so much time with Grandpa. Poor Sophie, who was obviously the favorite. Poor Sophie, who deserved better. I tried to ignore it, to rise above all the whispering and pouting. Grandpa had made his choice, and I wasn't about to apologize for it. But sitting there that day, surrounded by stiff smiles and brittle laughter, it was impossible not to feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Like a second skin I couldn't shed. Every fake laugh, every forced toast, every clink of a fork against a plate, it all felt strained, like a rubber band stretched too far. That's when it happened. Sophie, decked out in some designer dress and sky-high heels, leaned back in her chair like she owned the place, swirling her wine glass between her fingers like she was about to give a TED Talk. She gave me that sugary sweet smirk she always wore when she was about to cause trouble, and in a voice thick with fake sweetness, she said, "Let's all be thankful we're not pathetic like some people at this table." For a beat, nobody said a word. You could have heard a fly sneeze. Then, like clockwork, a few nervous giggles bubbled up. Cousin Caleb snorted into his napkin. Aunt Nora tried and failed to hide her grin behind her wine glass. Even Mom let out this shaky little laugh, caught somewhere between embarrassment and wanting to scold. I set my fork down slowly, deliberately. My heart was banging against my ribs, but my face stayed cool. Years of practice, years of biting my tongue and playing the easygoing one. But something inside me flipped off like a light switch. I smiled, not the tight, fake one I usually gave them, but a real smile. Calm. Sharp. Dangerous. Funny, I said, my voice slicing through the room like a blade. Grandpa didn't seem to think I was pathetic when he left me everything. It was like I dropped a grenade in the middle of the table. Everyone just froze. Forks hovered midair. Glasses trembled. Sophie's face crumpled in shock, her smirk vanishing like it had been slapped clean off her. But I wasn't finished. I lifted my glass, took a slow, deliberate sip of water, and added casually, "Good luck finding a new place to live." The silence that followed was total. You could have heard a pin drop onto that threadbare old carpet. What they hadn't fully wrapped their heads around yet, or maybe just hadn't wanted to, was that Grandpa's will wasn't just some polite suggestion. Everything had already been legally transferred to me. Deeds signed. Titles recorded. Paperwork stamped. The house they lived in, the land they thought belonged to them by birthright, all of it was mine now. I saw it hit Sophie first. The realization. It spread from her, slow and heavy, down the table. Mom's fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto her plate. Uncle Dean looked like he might keel over right into his mashed potatoes. Caleb muttered something under his breath and scooted his chair back like he couldn't get away fast enough. Sophie's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. For once in her life, she had absolutely nothing to say. It was glorious. I just sat there, soaking it all in, letting them stew in their own disbelief. All the fake laughs, the jabs, the whispered insults over the years, it had all built up to this one perfect moment. And for once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel out of place. I felt powerful. But I wasn't just there to gloat. Nah, this was just the opening act. What they didn't realize yet, what hadn't dawned on them, was that I had plans. Big ones. Grandpa's old house needed major work, stuff they'd all ignored for years because, well, it wasn't their name on the bills. The property taxes were overdue. The utility accounts were now in my name. And when I was done, there wouldn't be a single thing left for them to cling to. I set my glass down, wiped my mouth with my napkin, and, like nothing had happened, turned to Aunt Nora. Mind passing the potatoes? Her hand shook as she handed them over. That's when Sophie finally found her voice, though it was a lot shakier than usual. You can't be serious. I tilted my head, pretending to think it over. Dead serious. Her face turned beet red, and for half a second, I thought she might actually chuck her wine glass at me. Part of me almost hoped she would. Let her throw the first real punch. I was ready. But she didn't. She just sat there, trembling with rage and humiliation, barely able to keep it together. Meanwhile, I kept eating like it was just another casual Thanksgiving. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Turns out, they were right. Personally, I always thought revenge tasted even better when it came with turkey, stuffing, and a big helping of stunned silence. And believe me, I was just getting warmed up. The rest of Thanksgiving dinner dragged along like some weird, half-forgotten dream you can't quite shake. Nobody really talked after that bomb I dropped. Conversations fizzled out halfway through sentences. People stared way too hard at their plates, pretending that if they just focused enough, they could somehow erase the last 5 minutes from existence. But the truth hung over that table heavier than the smell of Mom's burnt gravy. Even without looking, I could feel their eyes on me. Aunt Nora's gaze kept flickering toward me and darting away like I might catch her staring. Uncle Dean kept pretending to check his phone like he was waiting for some important call that never came. Caleb kept sneaking glances at Sophie like he was hoping she had a plan to fix all this. And then there was Mom. She looked the worst of them all, like she was trapped between wanting to scream and wanting to disappear, her mouth twitching like a live wire. But Sophie? She didn't bother hiding it anymore. She sat there stiff as a statue, her fingers wrapped around her wine glass so tight I honestly thought the thing might shatter. She stared at me with this kind of pure, burning hate that was almost impressive in a twisted way. If looks could kill, they'd have been carving my name into the tombstone next to Grandpa's before dessert hit the table. I just kept eating. Slow, steady. Turkey. Stuffing. Mashed potatoes. I made a real show of it, savoring every forkful while they all sat there stewing in their own miserable silence. I wasn't in any hurry. This moment, this feeling, it was something I'd earned. When dessert finally shuffled onto the table, a sad little pumpkin pie with a crack right down the middle, Mom cleared her throat, her voice barely holding together. Lucas, maybe we could, talk later? Privately. Her voice was thin, almost cracking under the weight of it all. I set down my fork nice and slow, dabbed my mouth with my napkin like I had all the time in the world. Sure thing, Mom, I said, all pleasant and polite on the outside. But inside? I wasn't planning on letting her steer the conversation. Those days were over. As folks started gathering plates and making half-hearted excuses to escape to the kitchen or catch fresh air on the porch, Sophie caught up with me near the entryway. Her heels clicked hard against the worn-out hardwood, each step sharp and angry. You can't do this, she hissed, low enough so nobody else could hear. This was supposed to stay in the family. I cocked an eyebrow at her, feeling a smirk threaten to pull at the corner of my mouth. It is staying in the family, I said easily. Last I checked, I'm still family. Or did you forget? She looked like she wanted to spit nails. Her mouth twisted like she was trying to swallow something bitter, maybe a few choice insults. I could see the gears spinning behind her eyes, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to find a crack in my armor. You don't even need it, she snapped, voice shaking with the effort to keep it down. You don't have kids. You don't have a real family. What the hell do you even want with all this? I leaned in a little closer, lowering my voice so it was just between the two of us. Maybe, I said quietly, I'm just sick of being treated like garbage by people who only bother showing up when they think there's something in it for them. Her nostrils flared like she might swing at me right then and there. Part of me hoped she would. But she didn't. Instead, she spun around on her heel, heels stabbing into the floor as she stormed off. It was almost as satisfying as if she had thrown a punch. Later, after most of the dishes were stacked up and a few stragglers had drifted toward the living room to pretend they cared about whatever miserable football game was on, Mom found me standing near the back door. She looked older somehow, smaller, worn down in a way I hadn't noticed before. And for just a second, a flicker of guilt pricked the back of my mind. But it didn't last long. Because right behind that flicker came all the old memories, the dismissive looks, the comments she let slide, the way Sophie could do no wrong while I was expected to just eat my feelings and smile. "Lucas," she said, wringing her hands like she was trying to squeeze the right words out of them, "I know you're upset. But you have to understand, this house, it's important. It's always been a home for all of us." I crossed my arms and leaned back against the wall, staring at her. "Funny," I said, not bothering to soften the blow. "Sure didn't feel that way when I was growing up." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "We weren't perfect, okay?" "I know that," she said, voice cracking. "But your sister, she's having a hard time. She was really counting on some of this." There it was. The real heart of it. She was counting on Grandpa dying and handing her a free house, I said, flat as a board. "Don't pretty it up, Mom." Her mouth snapped shut so fast I almost heard her teeth click. She turned away, staring out the dusty window like maybe she could find an excuse out there somewhere. I just don't know what we're supposed to do now," she whispered. I let the silence stretch between us. Let her feel it. Let her feel even a sliver of the isolation I grew up with in that very house. Finally, I pushed off the wall and shrugged. "You'll figure it out," I said. "You always do." Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not the manipulative kind Sophie had mastered over the years. For a second, it looked like she might actually drop her pride and beg. But she didn't. Pride's a funny thing like that. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, shoved my keys into my pocket, and headed for the exit. As I passed the fireplace, I caught sight of Sophie sulking there, surrounded by a few cousins whispering words of fake sympathy into her ear. She shot me a glare that could have soured milk. I smiled back at her, a real, genuine, teeth-showing smile, and called out just loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Happy Thanksgiving." And then I stepped out into the crisp November night, letting the door swing shut behind me with a clean, satisfying click. But I knew this wasn't finished. Not even close. While they sat inside, stewing in their bitterness and confusion, I was already moving on to the next part of the plan. Because Grandpa hadn't just left me a house. He'd left me acres of land. And he'd left a letter, a short, sharp letter, spelling out exactly what he wanted done with it. He wasn't blind to what this family really was behind all the fake smiles and staged Christmas photos. He knew. And he trusted me to make sure his wishes were carried out. Losing the house? That was just the beginning. They hadn't seen anything yet. That night, I drove the long way back to my apartment, taking the quiet roads, letting the cold air soak through the cracked window. I thought about Grandpa, about all the nights we spent sitting out on the porch, talking about everything and nothing while the rest of the family bickered inside. Who got the biggest slice of pie? Who deserved more money this month? Who was working so hard and getting no appreciation? I was the one who stayed and listened. Even when I didn't have much to say, I stayed. Maybe that's why he trusted me in the end. The letter he left wasn't long, but every word was picked with care. Grandpa wasn't the type to waste ink or air. He loved his family, sure. But he wasn't blind. He'd seen the way they treated each other and how they treated me. The house, the land, the savings, he left them with me because he wanted them handled with care, not drained dry by a bunch of people who thought the world owed them something for showing up once in a while and faking a smile. I pulled into my parking spot, let the engine tick quietly as it cooled down, and finally pulled out my phone. I already had the number saved, Mr. Langston, Grandpa's old real estate lawyer. Sharp guy. Knew his stuff. And best of all, not the kind of man who got soft at a few crocodile tears. I tapped out a short text. Ready to proceed. Let's meet Monday. By the time I crawled into bed that night, my mind was racing a mile a minute. But under all the noise, there was this deep, steady kind of satisfaction. For the first time, I wasn't the one waiting for permission. I wasn't the afterthought. This time, I was the one holding the cards. And I wasn't about to fold. The next few days? Pure chaos, start to finish. It kicked off with the messages. At first, they tiptoed around it. Mom sent a couple of cautious texts, all polite and sugary, asking if I'd had time to think things over. Sophie tried to act casual, too, dropping a message about grabbing coffee like we were old pals catching up. Right on schedule, the guilt train left the station, packed full and picking up steam. I didn't answer a single one. Then things started to heat up. Sophie rang my phone 3 times in one afternoon, each voicemail a little more frantic than the last. She started out all sing-song sweet, "Hey, Danny, just want to talk, okay? Love you." By the third call, her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You're making a huge mistake." "Huge? Don't come crying to us when you realize what you've done." That last part? That one had me laughing out loud, sitting right there in my living room. Me crying to them. Yeah, right? That was rich? By Sunday night, Mom cracked. She showed up at my apartment in person, standing awkwardly in the hallway in her old winter coat, clutching a store-bought pie like a white flag. I didn't even invite her inside. Just stood there, planted in the doorway, blocking her path. "Lucas," she said, giving me this stiff little smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Honey, can we just talk? You know, as a family." I smiled back, light and easy. "Which family?" I asked. "You or Sophie's little fan club?" The words hit harder than I expected. For a second, something real broke through her face, not anger, not manipulation, just plain, old-fashioned regret. "We made mistakes," she said quietly, voice so soft I barely caught it. "But you're still our son." I stared at her for a long beat, letting her squirm a little. Then I said, "Didn't seem to matter when you were laughing at me across the table." She opened her mouth, probably searching for some excuse, but nothing came out. I shook my head and stepped back just enough to close the door, slow and steady. "I'll let you know when the paperwork's done." Click. That was the last I heard from her. Monday rolled around. I met Mr. Langston at his office, a warm little place lined with dark wood shelves, the air thick with the smell of old books and fresh brewed coffee. We went through the paperwork Grandpa had set up before he passed. The land? It wasn't being split up among the family like everyone had assumed. Half of it was already promised to a conservation trust, something Grandpa had been passionate about for years but had kept to himself. The rest? Already under contract to a developer, and the deal was worth more than I had ever dreamed. Grandpa had tied it all up neatly long before he ever left us. All I had to do was sign the dotted lines. And I did. Without hesitation. Once the contracts were finalized, I didn't just own the house free and clear, I also had enough money to ensure I never had to sit through another Thanksgiving where I was the family punching bag. Grandpa made sure of it. His final gift. His final justice. And the kicker? Without the surrounding land, the house itself was worthless. The property taxes were about to skyrocket thanks to the new developments. The place needed major repairs. The utilities were overdue. And none of them, not Sophie, not Mom, not Uncle Dean, had the cash or credit to fix it up. They gambled everything on me staying the same old Lucas, quiet, passive, easy to push around. They were about to find out that guy didn't live here anymore. 2 weeks later, I arranged for a courier to deliver formal notices to Mom's house. A single letter. Crisp. Professional. Notification of ownership transfer, tax obligations, and a clear eviction date if arrangements weren't made. 30 days. That's what they had. 30 days to pack their things and figure out their own lives. Or 30 days until the sheriff showed up with papers in hand. That same night, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Calls. Texts. DMs. Not just from Mom and Sophie, cousins, aunts, even random family, friends I hadn't heard from in years. All of them singing the same tired, broken song. How could you? This isn't what Grandpa wanted. Family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I switched off my phone, poured myself a drink, and raised a silent toast to the one man who had believed in me when nobody else ever did. I thought about something Grandpa once told me one of those evenings we sat out on the porch watching the sun disappear behind the fields. Sometimes, he said, family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who share your values. Don't ever let them guilt you out of knowing the difference. I hadn't forgotten. Not for 1 second. And now? Now it was their turn to understand that every little action, every harmless jab, every joke at my expense carried consequences. And I wasn't close to finished. While they scrambled around trying to figure out how to save themselves, I was already moving forward. Planning something permanent. Something they could never undo. The 30 days slipped by exactly like I knew they would. For a minute, I half expected them to try something desperate. Maybe some ridiculous court challenge. Maybe some crocodile tear performance on my doorstep. After all, Sophie had always been the queen of last-ditch dramatics. I wouldn't have been surprised if Mom had shown up again, pie in hand, loaded down with sweet words and veiled threats. But they didn't. Not right away, at least. At first, they tried giving me the cold shoulder. Same trick they used back when I was a kid. Ignore me long enough and maybe I'd come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. They plastered social media with photos of happy family get-togethers, smiling and posing like they had it all figured out, like I was the one missing out. I didn't bite. Then the tide shifted. And when it did, it shifted hard. Sophie, of course, led the charge. Angry texts, bitter Facebook posts, snide little whispers passed around the extended family. Lucas is gone power-hungry. Lucas is selfish. Lucas is destroying the family legacy. I watched it all from a distance, sipping my coffee, feeling absolutely nothing. Let them talk. Words didn't cost them a thing. Reality, though, the kind you can't bargain with, the kind that comes with signatures and sheriff's orders, that was finally knocking on their door. By the time the last week rolled around, their tone changed again. This time, it reeked of desperation. Mom sent a long, winding email packed full of nostalgia, pleading about tradition and family roots, ending with a dramatic "How could you do this to your own mother?" Uncle Dean gave it a shot too, calling twice and leaving these clumsy voicemails about healing and moving forward. Even Caleb, who usually couldn't be bothered to nod in my direction, texted me out of nowhere. "Hey bro, maybe we can work this out? No need to make it messy." I ignored every single one. They had made their decisions a long time ago, laughing at me, pushing me aside, treating me like a ghost at my own family table. Now that the ground was giving out under their feet, it wasn't my job to throw them a rope. The night before the eviction deadline, I decided to drive out to the house one last time. I didn't really know why, maybe just to close the book properly. I pulled up as the sun dipped low, throwing the sky into shades of violet and gold. The house looked tired, smaller, almost like it had given up too. Paint peeled in long strips down the siding. The front steps sagged like an old man's shoulders. The yard, once alive under Grandpa's hands, was now a wild, abandoned thing. I just sat in my truck for a minute staring. Not at the house itself, but at everything it used to represent. What it could have been if the people inside had actually cared. When I finally stepped out, I wasn't surprised to see Sophie waiting on the porch. She looked worn thin, makeup smeared, hair unkempt, arms hugging herself tight like she was holding herself together by sheer force of will. "You're really doing this," she said, her voice hoarse. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She stepped closer, heels clicking sharply across the warped porch boards. "Mom's got nowhere to go," she snapped. "Uncle Dean's broke. Caleb's struggling. You're throwing us out like trash." I shrugged, not unkindly. "They're adults. Time they started acting like it." Her face twisted, full of something ugly and raw. "You're disgusting," she hissed. I gave her a small, patient smile, the kind you give a child who's about to learn a hard lesson. "Funny," I said. "Didn't seem to bother you when you thought you were getting Grandpa's house gift-wrapped?" Her whole body tensed like she might slap me. But she didn't. Instead, her fists shook at her sides, and her mouth opened and closed without finding any words strong enough to spit. "You'll regret this," she finally managed, her voice breaking. I looked her dead in the eye. "No," I said simply. "I won't." I walked past her without another word, into the house, straight to Grandpa's old study. It was exactly how I remembered it, the heavy leather chair tucked behind the old desk, the dusty smell of books and pipe smoke hanging faintly in the air. I closed the door behind me and pulled open the bottom drawer. There, right where Grandpa had promised, was a thick manila envelope. Inside were two things, the deed and a letter dated months before he passed. "Lucas," it read, "if you're holding this, then things have gone the way I figured they would. I'm sorry it had to be you fixing the mess. But you're strong enough. You always have been. This house doesn't belong to people who treat family like punching bags. It belongs to someone who understands what family ought to mean. Whatever you choose to do next, I'm proud of you. Always have been. Love, Grandpa." I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling just slightly in my hands. Outside, muffled through the old glass windows, I could hear Sophie's voice rising, angry, panicked, desperate, probably rallying the others for some last-ditch plea or a Hail Mary guilt trip. I didn't care anymore. When I finally stood up, I knew exactly what needed to happen. I picked up the landline from Grandpa's desk and dialed Mr. Langston. "Go ahead," I said. The next morning, right on schedule, the sheriff showed up. I didn't bother being there. There was nothing left for me to see. Hadley handled the paperwork, the locks, the official notices taped to the doors. By noon, they were out. Some packed up whatever they could fit into their beat-up cars. Others called in favors, couch surfing like teenagers. Sophie threw a fit in the driveway, screaming about lawsuits, crying ugly, desperate tears. But none of it mattered. The chapter was closed. The house sat silent for a few more weeks. I drove by once or twice. It almost felt peaceful without the constant bitterness clawing at its walls. Then, one morning, the bulldozers arrived. The old house came down fast, a cloud of dust billowing up into a sharp, clear sky, like the place itself was finally sighing in relief. In its place, we built something better. A community center. A playground. A gathering spot for real families, not just ones tied together by blood, but by choice, by care, by effort. We named it after Grandpa, the Henry Callahan Memorial Center. A shiny bronze plaque out front carries his words. Family isn't about blood. It's about heart. I was there the day it opened, hands shoved into my jacket pockets, watching kids tear across the brand new playground while parents laughed and talked nearby. No fake smiles. No hidden knives. Just real joy. Real family. The kind Grandpa would have been proud to stand among. I didn't see much of the old family after that. Sophie packed up and moved a few towns away, still blaming everyone but herself. Mom found a little apartment somewhere small and quiet. She tried reaching out a few times. I didn't hate her. But I didn't open the door either. Some wounds don't need re-breaking just because someone regrets the limp. As for me, I bought a house not too far from the center. One with a wide porch and a swing set out back. I got married. Had a daughter, bright-eyed and stubborn in the best ways. Some nights we sit on the porch, her tiny feet swinging as I tell her about Grandpa James, about a man who built things with his hands and his heart, who believed kindness was a choice you made over and over again. She listens, wide-eyed, asking a million questions, laughing without a single weight on her little shoulders. And every time I hear her laugh, light and free, I know for sure. Family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. And this time, we built it right.